Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I have Jean-Philippe. He reached out to me through an email and wanted to share my story. So Jean-Philippe, welcome to my channel.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
so
for having
I'm so grateful that you're here for all of us to hear your story today. So how did the Jehovah's Witnesses come into your life?
Oh, at the time when I was active, I would be considered a second generation Jehovah's Witness. I wasn't born into it, but when I was born, my mom was already studying. But I do remember growing as partly Catholic, and I saw how my mom phased out from Catholicism into Jehovah's Witness. And by I think it was 1972, it was a international assembly up in New York. I want to say Shea Stadium. I don't remember which stadium, but it was a big assembly. I saw my mom get baptized as a little child. So she was the only one at the time that was strongly into the truth. And my story would be very unique because the individuals that got my mom into the truth um, was actually the CEO and his wife. So my mom, she was surrounded by tons of knowledge, and she'd gotten into the truth by pretty much directly from the society. And I watched the transition, and I was there in the early 70s. I was involved through my mom. She was very active. She's always been pioneering. She's gone to Gilead school. She's hardcore. And I remember I was there during the 70s, and within 73, 74, we relocated to Miami, Florida, because at the time, um, I have a French background, Haitian Creole. So I speak Creole, I speak French and other languages as well. So my family, there were six families when we relocated to Miami. We were the ones that sort of spearheaded and started the French congregations in Miami because there wasn't any. And so that gave us I can say privileges, I guess. We had full exposure to the Watchtower and Tract Society because anybody that knows the system of the organization, when there's an opportunity of new congregations popping up, they're sort of like arrogant. They go through a campaign of, hey, look, this is what Jehovah's Spirit has done. We have this going on. So because of the fact that my family and five others were the largest that formed the congregation, we had a lot of opportunities of being exposed to the governing body and so on and so forth. I recall going back to New York because of personal, not bad issues, but in my family, our descendants, we had immigration issues. So they would kind of split the family up in case they run into any problems. They can move swiftly and quickly. So one half, we went back to New York. The other half stayed in Florida. I remember growing up in 1975, yes, Armageddon was supposed to come, and that was a big controversy. The talk, I distinctly remember, Brother Franz gave the talk about, hey, this is Armageddon. So we were encouraged not to open businesses. If you have any businesses, don't buy homes, don't buy this. The reign of Jesus Christ from 1914 had hit its mark, and Armageddon was supposed to come. So it was a big thing in 1975. Um, but as a child, I've always had questions. I've always been a critical thinker, if ever since I was a child, and I would get chastised for certain questions I would ask. Literally, I'm physically for asking certain questions. And because of this, that's what kept me as far as in the organization, because I wanted to know, why am I being chastised for asking legitimate questions? Why was I treated different, because harshly different, because I thought different? So that's what kept me in the organization, because I had an agenda. I wanted to find out. I wanted knowledge, because I always figured if I run into somebody else that had the same mindset as me, and who would they go to for answers. So I wanted to be that individual who had the answers. So since I was a child, I got used to being chastised, being handled a certain way. So I learned how to adapt to the system. So as I was growing up, I remained active. And by my senior year in high school, I got baptized. I think that was I want to say 1988, 87, 88. So I pioneered. I mean, back then, full time was 90 hours. You had full time pioneers, you had auxiliary pioneers, and you had to do 90 plus hours. So I was the group. There was a lot of youth in my congregation. We were. It was a handful of us. We all sort of were critical thinkers, but I was the bold one that took that step into finding out. Um, I didn't realize. I didn't fully know the system. I just know how to go with it. But I didn't realize being active when you start getting responsibilities in congregations. I didn't know that was a step to getting you move up to more responsibilities into becoming minister servant, becoming elder, and becoming a Bethelite. So what made my situation unique is I'm multilingual. So I was doing things in more than one kingdom halls: French Kingdom Hall, French North South, and English Kingdom Hall. And as I progressed, um, I was given more responsibilities, and I ended up at Bethel because of those responsibilities. And I want to say summer of '91. Now, during that year, it was pandemonium because I got into the year where prior to that, there was one of the governing body members was disfellowshipped, which was Brother Franz. And this was like around 80, 81. And after he was disfellowshipped, you there was like a thing they entitled it the witch hunt, whereas you had members of Bethel that was there like 40 plus years. I mean, they were there, and it was a domino effect, and a lot of them end up being disfellowshipped. So that was my chance of becoming a Bethelite. I started off as a temporary Bethelite because during that year they lost a lot of members, and then we just gotten into the organization had just gotten into the World Book of Guinness records, with the Kingdom Halls, building Kingdom Halls in 24, 48 hours. Then they had just purchased the Stanley Theater. Then we had the Albemarle Theater. Then there was a great expansion. Several Kingdom Halls had to been put up. So they were sort of desperate. So I didn't really apply to be a Bethelite, but that time the theme was serving where the need was great. And they would call the elders and say, hey, nominate exemplary brothers. I just happened to make that list. And so that's how that's how I landed into becoming a Bethelite. I was assigned at Brooklyn. I was with the reconstruction crew, demolitions. And what they would do is everything that was, they were going through a legal issue, especially with the Stanley Theater. And then they had purchased the Albemarle Theater, Clarendon, Fenmore. We had so many buildings that had to be put up. But because of the issue they had with Stanley Theater, they had to pass certain inspections in order to avoid more legal issues. So we had to finish up the Stanley Theater. Then we had a timeline for everything. And we ended up having to do the Fenmore, Albemarle Theater, sorry, plus its Kingdom Halls. Then we had to go to East New York, Clarendon. So, and that's how I stayed busy as far as my activities in Bethel. However, I got reinvited. Once you play the game, they reinvite you. So while there, back then we didn't have internet. So if you had to study, if you had to do research, you can go into the library or you can go into the archives. So all the questions I had as a child, boom, I went to in the library, and the things I found was beyond believable. Like for instance, everything you were taught about Jehovah, I mean everything, is circumstantial. Jehovah himself is circumstantial. we were told, remember who we were taught who wrote the first 5 books of the Bible? Allegedly, it was supposed to be Moses. That's circumstantial. And I found out because I always questioned, there was a part when Moses died. There was everything was written about it in detail. If I'm writing a book of what went on and I'm dead, how can I complete that chapter? And back then they would say, well, it possibly was Joshua because Joshua was the next in line. But then I would say, well, that's impossible because Joshua was a general. Israelites were at war and Joshua was always sent on missions. How did he have time to write details of Moses when he's gone on a mission, especially Joshua and Caleb? Well, and well, Jehovah has ways, da da da. Well, my research, I would ask, well, who's Baruch? Physical research leads to the first 5 books being written by the individual named Baruch. And then I always the question, Moses had something to do with the book of Psalms and also the book of Job. Well, how so? And those are stories that happened way after his time. Was he a time traveler? I would ask these type of questions and I would, again, be chastised for it. Then the second thing I found was that the entire Bible is not, religion itself is a fallacy in its entirety. Religion is a business. It's something like it's set up like a hedge fund. So it's not just the organization. I'm talking religion as a whole. It's a fallacy. And the society had several versions of Bibles. A lot of people don't realize that King James has like four versions, 2 revisions on one. We know the one that was written and then revised in 1611. He also has a Bible of demonology. A lot of people don't know. Then you have the Septuagint version, which is the version the Greeks took, and they formed a Vulgate version. So everything we're reading was fashioned not only from the Council of Nicaea, but in the 4th century, 5th century, 6th century, it was mayhem. Every pope that was in power, Pope Clement, Pope Jerome, these guys inserted their ideas in all the scriptures we've been reading today. They're not original. And that henceforth the Vulgate version, if you want to know the true context before it was changed, in the Vulgate version, they used to put footnotes specifying that, hey, this is not the original text. If you decide to believe, then it's on you. When I found that out, that was like, whoa. Then I found out about, everybody knew about UN. And allegedly, the society was part of the UN through the NRO. Okay, fine and dandy. But they also have stocks. They own stocks in many things. Well, of the drones that we hear about today that's shooting missiles and doing all this stuff. Well, who do you think is the biggest stock shareholders? It's the society. And they're telling people that they represent Christendom, empire of false religion, Babylon the Great, but yet they're the biggest culprits under the NRO. And then the shares that they owe is dealing with military contract companies and dealing with weapons, maybe drones. What else did I find out? Russell, the biggest con man alive. He even lost a court case through his con. And like today's update, everybody's speaking on this update that recently just happened. It's mainly the one about the faithful and discreet slave, about the overlapping. That's not the first time. That happened before. They just worded it different. But this is probably maybe the third time. I've seen it happen twice during my 40-year tenure. So this is the third time for me. So I'm not even shocked. What's different is, yeah, the beard and maybe the pants among women. But as far as the overlapping, that's nothing new. That is nothing new. So I became, I was also a minister servant. I was supposed to be appointed as an elder. The reason why I didn't get that is because but at that time you had to be married, to be an elder. They preferred one that was married because you had to lead by example. Da, da, da. So, like I said, I knew the system. So what I did was I just stayed single because I knew I wasn't going to stay long. So I remained single so I can just stay exactly where I'm at because I found a sweet spot and I went along with that. What else? My dad became a witness later on because he wasn't in the truth at the time. And he became a witness. He also became a minister, servant, elder, but he ended up being disfellowshipped, so he never went back. But to this very day, my mom is she's just a diehard, no matter what. Even if you show her, hey, look, she will not budge. She will not budge. Um, I'm used to being asked, so
Yeah,
feel free.
thank you so much. There's so much information there, Jean-Philippe. I think so much truth to all of this too. So much knowledge that we didn't know about as witnesses, that we were like lied to. I mean, obviously, as ex-witnesses now, we can do all the research and learn all the things. But as witnesses, we were lied to about
Exactly.
everything, which is crazy.
Exactly.
And yet
Exactly.
we believed it. We were so blind to it all, and we couldn't ask questions. So we had to have a lot of faith in order to just walk blindly in all of that knowledge. That wasn't even true. And then you said your mom is a diehard and your dad was an elder and then got disfellowship. So then your parents, as you became went to Bethel, became a servant, and then you ended up coming back home. At that point, was your dad an elder, or was that still like in the process? Like, how old were you two? If you, I know I'm asking a bunch of questions too.
Right, right.
Go ahead and answer that question first.
Which one's my dad?
Yeah. So when you came back from Bethel, how
Mhm.
old were you? And at that point, was your dad already an elder?
Yes, my dad was prior to my departure. My dad was an elder. I went to Bethel at the age of 20. I want to say 21, going on 22. I came back home from Bethel at 25, 26, if I remember correctly. But by that time, I had left the French congregation and stuck with the English. And the reason being is because, like I said, there was a lot of youths that had a lot of questions that I knew I can handle and answer. But the problem why I left is I already saw the light. I saw behind the curtain. I saw the confirmation that I was looking for. Um, and I was already at odds with, well, back then we used to call them presiding overseer. They're known as coordinators today. This guy was a prick. He was a tyrant. And I was the only one else that can stand up to him. So I sort of was like a protector in a sense. But then I got discouraged is because they were protectors. Well, I was protecting people that was overwhelmed with fear. And I was very careful with saying certain things because, oh, you're an apostate. Oh, the minute you say something, you're labeled as an apostate. The minute you say something. So I would wait for him to ask me something. I would, as an elder, you have to give him a scripture. And what I would do is I'll give him a scripture, but then I'll give him something to think about. So rather, just come out bluntly and just say it, I would give him a scripture, make him feel comfortable. But then, like I said, I'll give him something to think about. And I'll say, well, sometimes if you're looking for a certain answer, you can't get it from people. No matter how much knowledge the person have, you have to seek it for yourself. Um, but with that's the reason why I stayed with that particular congregation because I wanted to deal with that tyrant, which I did eventually. Um, but going back to my dad was disfellowship maybe right before I left. I would say about 92. I never asked why. Um, they pretty much shunned me. So I shunned them back in return because I didn't really care about being shunned. I'm a spiteful person anyway. You do something to me, I got to get you back. I was never that love it. I never faked it. That's the thing with me. So, but I would, like I said, there's a lot of things I found out while I was up there. Um, and Jehovah is not even the actual name. The tetragrammaton is not even a name. It's a frequency. It's back then, if your conscious level was high, like the way the alleged Jesus described it, all you had to do was utter it and it came to be. Henceforth, the I am theory. Um, Brother Russell was, Russell, he was actually a full-fledged Mason. And here's the funny thing. I was a Mason while I joined the Masonic order while I was going to Kingdom Hall. Because I was, like I said, I was curious. I'm unique. Like I said, I was curious. And when I joined, back then we had 3 meetings. You had Tuesdays was the Bible study. Thursdays was theocratic ministry school. And the choice of Saturday or Sunday, you had Watchtower study, public talks and Watchtower study. Well, fortunately for me, the Masonic meetings were Wednesday, every first and third Wednesday. So it didn't interfere. And then as I went up in grades and degrees, it was every first and third Sunday. So we had an option of Saturday or Sunday. The congregation I'm in chose Saturday. So, like I said, my journey was to, okay, he was a Mason. What is it about masonry? And, the shocking thing is, I won't say shocking, but a lot of the Watchtower material is proportionally Masonic. And the 1914 and all that stuff, all that's Masonic. It has nothing to do with the year of the reign of Christ. You got to understand a lot of the scriptures are the whole biblical story. It's if you read Galatians 4, it tells you in plain English that everything about the Bible is symbolic. It's allegorical. So, but everything like the Song of Solomon's, the Wisdom of Solomon, the Book of Psalms, that was taken from ancient Egypt scripts. You got the Book of the Dead, the Book of Life, the Emerald Tablets. So majority of the Bible, the scripture that you're reading, actually came from Egypt. That's where Russell got the 1914 ideology from. Another thing I've discovered or found was Adam and Eve are not names. It's a description of first man, first woman. But we thought that they were literally names. And there were several Adam and Eves, several. And I don't want to say it, but I'll say it anyway. But anybody that's watching this feed, that's listening, you have to do deep research. And one question I always had when I was a child is why don't Jehovah just get rid of Satan and deal with him and call it a day? Why we have to play this cat and mouse game? Well, they're brothers. I know it sounds hard and far-fetched to swallow, but there's 2 brothers going at it. And we're like in the middle of a family dispute. What else did I find out? I can go on and on.
So I'm curious because I know you said you left in 93 and then you got back in 2012. So
Yes.
to talk a little bit about your exit out in
Okay.
93 and then what made you come back in 2012?
93, I left. What made me come back in? Well, when I left, I saw hypocrisy at its best because when I left, I ended up going to the military and coming back out of the military, I joined the law enforcement team unit. I was a police officer. And the same individuals that treated me like an outcast, I never got this fellowship or reproof or anything. I just exited. but I was shunned anyway because of how I handled the coordinator at the time. But those same individuals that shunned me, when I came back as a police officer, it was like as if I'm the prodigal son. And I'm like, what? And what made me return was what was it? I think it was an update, and it turned out to be a discussion I had with a brother about Jehovah's forgiveness, and he was using Solomon as his explanation, and I told him, well, if you really go further in with your explanation, Solomon will be forgiven because I forgot how I explained it. And then lo and behold, they came out with a new article, a new update saying, yes, Solomon would be forgiven and he has a chance for resurrection. I think I remember I said because Jehovah, because of Jehovah's promise, that's going to spare Solomon. And he was so adamant, like, oh, no, no, no. So now I was curious as to what updates do they have. And I was telling, I sort of made a bet with a friend of mine that I can go in because nothing's changed. I can go in and I can just get back into a exalted position in no time. And it was like a truth, a dare, and I did. And within 2 years, within 2 years, it was ready for me to handle responsibilities at the congregation. But once I proved that to my friend by 2015, I think it was, I don't remember the exact year. I think it was 2012. Prior to 2015, I was already gone because I went back to college and got another degree in 2015.
So interesting. So you went back not because of wanting to be a witness again. It was more
Oh,
there.
yes, yes. And then I heard about I think it was the era there was a lot of molestation going on, pedophilia, and my cop instinct also kicked in too. I wanted to see how far involved are the governing body, the elders, and I didn't see a movement towards eliminating pedophilia. I saw more of a pampering and covering, like just hey, like hear no evil, see no evil.
Mm.
And when I gotten back, I had to study the Isaiah book, which was nothing. And then once you say, "Hey, I'm ready to come back," you sit before a committee and they drill you. And the main question they asked me was, um, "Are you a pedophile?" Yes, yes. And they asked it more than once. And that's the only thing I saw that they took towards that problem was just asking the individual who wants to be a witness. They asked me two vital questions. Will you ever discuss? No. Are you a pedophile? That was it. That was it. And that's when I said, okay, nothing's changed. And like I said, within 2 years, I went back to pioneering, went back. I started giving talks already. And I was like, oh, this nothing changed.
Oh, and in that time from 20 or 1993 to 2012, I'm sure you saw a lot of different things from the organization. And your mom was still a witness.
Yes, still is to this day.
And what was her response when you came back in 2012? And was your dad was always, you said he never went back to the religion.
He never went back. But he will always, when he started speaking to me again, he always said, "Hey, man, I know I'm going to sound like a hypocrite, but it'd be nice for me if I see you back in the congregation, back in the Kingdom Hall. You know, you were, you were elite. You were, you throwing, you can't just waste your life like that."
Mm.
When I went back, the only reason why he knew that's how I ended up in Georgia. The conversation, congregation that I ended up with is in Georgia. And I met them through my dad because they were trying to get my dad to come back to the truth. And those same brothers approached me. And that's how my dad found out through direct contact because he knew of the individuals that convinced me to go back. But like I said, I always had an agenda. I never went back to be in the truth. I
Yeah.
just wanted to see where things were. The only difference was they claimed that they were more loving and more, uh, warm,
Yeah.
but mm, I didn't see it. I didn't see anything different.
Okay.
I didn't
And
see-
talk to me about your life from 2015 to now. What do you feel like you've done with your life now that you're completely the witnesses are behind you?
Well, I left law enforcement. Now I'm in aerospace science. Right now, I'm in school for aerospace science and atmospheric science, meteorology. Um, I work for Delta Airlines, a huge company, and I'm part of the pilot training. I work on flight simulators, and that's all I've been doing ever since. I still have active young members who have questions. They still call me and say, "Hey, what do I do? What do you know?" They still call me for counseling and all that. I don't turn them down, because I've learned back then. Um, I used to rush and tell them, "Hey, this, that." You know what? Some of them they think it works for them, so I let it be. But when they come to me with certain things, then I hit them with what they need to know.
Mm.
Yeah. So.
Well, I would love to add your contact, like maybe your Facebook or your email address in the description notes, if that would be okay with you for
Oh
people.
yes, definitely, definitely.
Awesome. I'm
And for
sure.
those, if you have anyone that's listening right now, it's the exit is best if you just keep it simple. Um, you don't need to write a letter. You don't need to do no disassociation, no drama. All you're gonna do is invite drama. The best way to exit is to just slowly become inactive. Because I noticed a lot of them that's trying to exit, they're wrapped up in fear, and then they don't know anything or anyone outside of the organization. So mentally, they break down. In fact, I know some that even committed suicide. The best way, the helpful way to do it is just to just stop. That's it. Just stop and just gradually grow out of it.
And build a life outside of the religion while you're still kind of walking out of it. So you don't have nothing when you actually are completely out of it.
Exactly. And don't worry, because there's no Armageddon. There's no paradise. You just have to live
Paradise is
through
here.
it.
We're living in paradise.
Exactly. All that is just a fallacy. Don't worry about that. There's no last days. There's none of that.
Oh, no, so true. You've lived a very well-rounded life,
Thank you.
Jean-Philippe. I think there's so many layers to your story of one being a regular pioneer and a Bethelite, and then being a cop, and then going back into the religion with not really an intention to stay in the religion, but more of a dare, and then now also changing your career into a completely different place in your life. And you've lived quite a life with all the experiences that you have. So now what else would you like to add to this interview other than what you've already shared with the audience?
Well, that individual that had that dare with me, I hope he's watching this. But what I can say is he did stop studying, and but he's like this. He's still straddling. Sometimes, oh, I miss it, and sometimes, oh, so. But I hope he sees, because again, and then like I stated before, those who are looking to exit, first off, don't trust your spouse. If you have information, or if you want to say something, don't trust your spouse. Don't trust a member. Don't trust anyone. You just have to slowly transition yourself out and find a life afterwards. But if you have to share what you know or what you found out, make sure that individual or those individuals are exactly on the same page as you. Because the worst thing, if that's all you knew all your life, to be shunned and to be labeled, because it's not a great thing to be labeled as something you're not. And as far as I knew some that wanted to leave the organization and still be religious. It's up to you. But all of it is a fallacy. There's no worries. There's nothing to worry about. Just live good. Be good to everyone. Be good to yourself. love yourself, and then love everyone afterwards. That's that.
It's so freaking simple. It's people that make it difficult.
Exactly.
And the fear that is entrenched in religion makes it messy
Yes.
and makes people really confused and makes people scared. And there's so many people that have left the organization decades ago and still hold on to so much fear. It's enmeshed in their blood, whether it's their fear of Armageddon coming or their fear of celebrating birthdays publicly or their fear of just sharing their story like you have for somebody else to hear that now they've publicly announced that they're no longer a witness and so that has spoken to them is not allowed to speak to them anymore. Well, it's those relationships were never real relationships. And
Exactly.
it's tragic that that person is not speaking to you anymore, but that person was never a friend anyway. So
That's
yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think that there's so much knowledge that you brought to this interview and a load of different life experiences as well that people are going to resonate with. So thank you so much, Jean-Philippe. I really appreciate this interview.
no problem. No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.